Hey there! Do you dream of flying a helicopter? Or maybe you've wondered how much it costs to own one of these machines? Helicopters. For some, they're toys for millionaires. For others, they're a tool for work, a rescue, freedom, adrenaline. It's not just about buying it. It's a whole life full of expenses, checkups, fuel, and surprises. In this video, we'll clear up all your questions. Let's start with the question everyone asks first. How much does a helicopter cost? Because before you even think about fuel, maintenance, and licenses, you first need to buy the machine itself. Helicopter prices vary a lot and mostly depend on the type, who made it, and what it's used for. You can find light two-person helicopters often used for training, as well as fancy multi-million-dollar machines for VIPs, rescue teams, or special forces. Let's take the first example, the Robinson R-22. It's a two-person helicopter with a piston engine, very popular in flight schools. A new one costs about $300,000, which is a bit over 1,300,000 Polish zloty. But a used one, depending on its condition and how many hours it's flown, can be found for around $150,000, which is about 650,000 Polish zloty. The second example is the Robinson R-44, the most popular helicopter for private owners around the world. This model has 4 seats, a longer range, and can do more things. A new one costs between $500,000 and $600,000, which is about 2 to 2.5 million Polish zloty. You can buy a used one for about $250,000, which is roughly 1 million Polish zloty, about the same price as a fancy SUV. And now, an example from the higher end, the Airbus H125, once known as the AS350. This is a turbine helicopter often used by rescue services, transport companies, and film crews. A new one starts at about $3 million, which is over 12 million Polish zloty. And that's just the basic version. Versions with fancy interiors or extra systems can be much more expensive. Of course, there are also models on the market that cost tens of millions of Polish zloty, but today we're focusing on machines that regular enthusiasts and professionals can get, not just super rich people or government agencies. To sum up, the cheapest used helicopters can be bought for a few $100,000 Polish zloty, but for a new, reliable and comfortable machine, you'll have to pay from 1 million to even several million Polish zloty. And that, as you'll soon find out, is just the start of the costs. Flying a helicopter is truly special. You can take off straight up, hover in one spot, and land almost anywhere. But that freedom comes at a cost, literally and specifically, every time you fill up. Helicopters burn a lot of fuel. Compared to airplanes, they're less efficient, and their rotors and control systems need a huge amount of energy. This means that 1 hour of flight burns as much fuel as driving several hundred kilometers in a very gas-guzzling car. Let's start with the most popular model among private owners, the Robinson R-44. This helicopter burns, on average, 60 to 70 liters of avgas aviation fuel per hour. With current fuel prices in Poland, which range from 6 to 8 zloty per liter, 1 hour of flight costs about 400 to 550 zloty. And we're only talking about fuel here. For comparison, a regular passenger car burns about 7 liters of fuel per 100 kilometers on average. So a Robinson R-44 burns 10 times more in just 1 hour. Now, for an example with bigger turbine-powered machines like the Airbus H125 or the Bell 407. Their engines use 120 to even 160 liters per hour, but this time we're talking about Jet A1 fuel, which is aviation kerosene. Its price is similar to avgas and sometimes even higher. As a result, the fuel cost for 1 hour of flight can be anywhere from 1,000 to even 2,000 zloty. It's also good to remember that fuel consumption isn't constant. It changes depending on weather conditions, takeoff weight, flight altitude, speed, and even the pilot's flying style. An experienced pilot can save some fuel with smoother maneuvers, but the differences aren't huge. You can't cheat physics. A helicopter is a machine that needs a lot of energy. Plus, there are other operating fluids, engine oil, hydraulics, coolant in some models. While they're used less than fuel, they also need regular checks and top-ups. In summary, if you plan to fly for fun once a week, the monthly fuel costs alone can be from 2 to 8,000 zloty, depending on the helicopter. When we think about the cost of a helicopter, it's easy to focus on its purchase price, but actually it's the service, inspections, and spare parts that make keeping this machine a real financial challenge. Let's start with the basics. Every helicopter needs regular technical inspections, and it's not like with a car, once a year and you're done. Here, inspections are strictly set by time or the number of hours flown. For example, the first services are done after 100 flight hours, then after 500, and the biggest inspections, called general overhauls, happen every 2,200 hours. Each of these inspections isn't just a routine check. It often involves taking the machine apart, checking key systems, replacing parts, and checking the condition of the rotors, gears, and engine. And all of this, according to aviation rules, must be done by certified aircraft mechanics, which means it's not cheap. Spare parts are another story. Let's take the Robinson R-44 helicopter as an example. Replacing the main rotor blades, which have a certain lifespan and must be replaced regardless of their condition, costs about 100,000 Polish zloty. The main transmission itself, which moves power from the main rotor, can cost as much as 50,000 Polish zloty. The tail boom, which is the back part of the body with the tail rotor, also doesn't last forever. Replacing this part can cost about 40,000 Polish zloty, and that's just one of many parts of the structure. And what about the engine? In piston helicopters like the R-44 we talked about earlier, the Lycoming engine needs a major overhaul after 2,000 flight hours. Such an overhaul can cost as much as 300,000 Polish zloty. In turbine models like the Airbus H125, the costs are even higher and can reach over 1 million Polish zloty. What's more, many helicopter parts have a set lifespan, meaning a maximum time they can be used. Even if they aren't worn out after a certain number of hours, they must be replaced. There's no room for cutting corners here. We also need to mention the small daily things: oil filters, spark plugs, seals, cables, belts, lubricants. These items are replaced regularly. They aren't that expensive on their own, but with frequent flying they can add up to several thousand Polish zloty in monthly costs. It's also worth adding that helicopters aren't self-sufficient machines. Every inspection, every repair must be written down in special technical documents, and that means more work, more hours from specialists, more bills. Even if your helicopter doesn't fly every day, you still need to store it somewhere. A helicopter isn't like a folding bike you can just put in your garage. And keeping it outside in the elements, that's a risk no sensible person would take. Helicopters are very sensitive to weather conditions. Rain, snow, wind, temperature changes, all of these can affect the condition of the mechanics and avionics. That's why it's standard to keep the machine in a special hangar, ideally one that's heated and dry at a certified helipad or airport. And here's the first regular cost: hangar fees. In Poland, prices vary depending on the location. At smaller airports and helipads, the monthly cost can be around 2,000 zlotys, but in bigger cities with hangars that offer full service, prices can go up to 4 or even 5,000 zlotys per month. Annually, that's 24 to 60,000 zlotys, just so your helicopter has a place to stay. Plus, some places charge extra for taking the machine out of the hangar, preheating before a flight, or access to ground services. And if you have a turbine helicopter, it often needs to be constantly plugged in, which also adds to the costs. The next thing is insurance. In the world of aviation, there's no way around it. Everything needs to be covered by a policy. Generally, you need at least 2 types of insurance: third-party liability and hull insurance, which covers your own machine. For a light private helicopter like a Robinson R-44, the yearly insurance cost starts at around 20,000 zlotys. If you have a newer model, a larger helicopter, and you fly commercially, that amount can go up to 40 or 50,000 zlotys per year, and in some cases, much more. Let's not forget that insurance companies in aviation look at everything: the number of hours flown, the pilot's experience, the hangar location, how often the machine is used, and even the weather in that area. For new owners, the policy might be more expensive and not always easy to get, and that's not all. If you plan to use your helicopter in public spaces, you need to make sure you have a valid airworthiness certificate and up-to-date technical documents. These official steps also come with costs, inspections, government fees, and waiting times. Even if you already have a helicopter and a place to keep it, you still can't just hop in and fly. To legally fly a helicopter, you need to get the right permissions, specifically a helicopter pilot's license. In Poland and most European countries, the basic license is the PPLH, which stands for Private Pilot License Helicopter. It's like a driver's license for a pilot, but much harder to get and more expensive. To get this license, you need to complete at least 45 hours of training flights with an instructor. But in reality, most students finish their training after about 50 to 60 hours, because that's when they can fly the helicopter by themselves and safely. The cost for 1 hour of training flight in a piston helicopter like a Robinson R-22 or R-44 is usually between 2,500 and 4,000 zlotys. This depends on the school where it's located and the helicopter model. This means that the total cost to get a PPLH license can range from about 150,000 to even 250,000 zlotys. But that's not all. The course price also includes ground school, a Class 2 aviation medical exam, fees for exams and paperwork, and the cost of learning materials. Getting a license is just the first step. To keep your license valid, you need to fly regularly. This means doing what's called a renewal flight time, flying with an instructor, and getting your aviation medical checks updated every 2 years. What if you want to fly at night in bad weather or for money? Then you'll need more special permissions. VFR Night, IRH, which is for flying using instruments, and even a CPLH, a commercial pilot license helicopter. These extra permissions will cost you tens or even hundreds of thousands of zlotys more. After all the numbers, costs and checkups, you might be wondering now, is it even worth it? Can owning a helicopter make sense, or is it just a fancy luxury? The answer isn't simple. For some, it's an investment in time, for others, image, for still others, pure joy. And it all depends on how and why you want to use this machine. Let's start with commercial uses. Helicopters are super important in many jobs, like in medical rescues, VIP air travel, land surveying, forest patrols, filming from the sky, or quickly moving people and gear to hard-to-reach places. For companies that make money from every hour of flight, buying a helicopter can pay for itself after a few years of hard work. It's simply a tool that makes money, saves time, and makes things work better. On the other hand, we have private owners, people who buy a helicopter to fulfill a dream, travel without traffic, take their family on weekend trips out of town, or just fly because they can. Is it worth it financially? Probably not. But not everything in life has to be worth it in terms of money. For many owners, a helicopter is like a yacht, expensive, but it gives a feeling of freedom, independence, and being special. There's also a practical reason. If you run a business and need to move quickly between cities, a helicopter can be a real choice instead of a car or even a plane. So the question, is it worth it, needs to be asked differently. Are you ready to pay these costs for what you gain? A helicopter is not just a way to get around, it's a way of life. It's a way of thinking, organizing your day, and sometimes even a way to escape from the usual routine. Before we finish, I have some really interesting facts about helicopters that you might not have heard yet, because these machines, though terribly expensive, also have a lot of fascinating secrets. Many people ask, what happens if a helicopter engine stops working in the air? And here's a surprise, it doesn't necessarily mean a crash. Most helicopters have a function called auto-rotation. It's an emergency landing technique without engine power. Thanks to the air momentum and the right blade angle, the rotor keeps spinning, and the pilot can safely land the machine on the ground. It's difficult, but doable. Unlike airplanes, helicopters can not only hover in place, but also move sideways and backward. This is all thanks to the rotor's moving disc and the proper blade setting. In practice, this means the pilot can precisely drive the helicopter between two trees or hover a few meters above the ground without moving. Among the most expensive helicopters in the world, the Airbus H225 Super Puma reigns supreme, a machine whose price reaches over $50 million, which is about 200 million Polish zlotys. That's more than many private jets. Inside luxury like a hotel, and a range of over 800 kilometers. In 2013, two pilots set a world record by flying an Augusta Westland AW-139 helicopter for almost 14 hours without stopping, covering over 2,000 kilometers. Of course, the machine was specially prepared for this flight, and there were extra fuel tanks on board. The smallest manned helicopter, the Gen H4 from Japan, is only 1.5 meters long and weighs about 70 kilograms. It can lift one person and fly at a speed of about 90 kilometers per hour. It looks a bit like a giant drone, just with a seat. That's all for today. I hope this video showed you the real cost of flying a helicopter, not just in money, but also in time, knowledge, and responsibility. If you learned something new, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future content. If you could choose a helicopter, a private jet, a yacht, or maybe something even crazier, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Until the next video, take care. Bye for now.